Hey guys, my name is Chris. Welcome to another episode of How to Copy and Steal. Today's going to be a special one. As you can tell, I'm standing. It's also my first interview with a remote guest. And this one's going to be a good friend of mine and a mentor. But before we get started, let's roll the intro. And we're back. And we're not live, but we're still back. Today, I am joined by Kason Morris. Good friend of mine. I consider him a mentor of mine, even though I don't think he thinks I think of him as a mentor. But he is one of my
Oh, but I
mentors.
but I do think that.
Okay, good. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I feel like you're almost here. I can kind of just touch you just a little bit.
Almost right. Little all the way fist
Some
bump,
social
boom, right?
distancing. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Life is good. Definitely blessed, and is a pleasure to have this conversation with you right now. I know it's virtual, but it is like I'm right there in the studio with you.
Yeah.
So pretty dope.
Yeah, one day we'll get you out to San Diego, the whole fam. You guys may not want to move back over to the tri-state
Maybe
area.
not the whole fam, but we can start with me. Let's do
Okay.
the trial run. Maybe I won't come back. Who
Oh
knows?
damn. um, well, yeah. Kason is doing some exciting things with his life right now. He's getting ready to launch a business. But more so than that, he is wearing so many hats right now. But I'll let him just take the stage and just introduce himself to you all. Yeah, Kason, take it away.
Cool. Well, hey everybody, Kason Morris here. What do I do? What do I do? By day, I am the director of learning, of employee learning for a fast-growing technology company. So what does that really mean at the end of the day? I'm helping people do better work in their jobs, helping them get the skills that they need to move forward in what they do. Outside of that, I also design courses. I've designed courses and programs and learning for about the better part of 15 years. Um, Everything for me is all about how can I help people grow and do more, and that has driven my entire career path and my whole way in what I do professionally. Um, and where has that left me now? Now I'm moving to that next stage of prior to this, I was doing this for lots of different companies behind the scenes. And now with everything that's happened with COVID and the pandemic, and noticing a lot of people that look like us out of work, looking for opportunities, I figured it was time to start to step out and provide my own learning under my own brand to help people move from good to great and learn from the lessons that I've gathered over the years through trial and error with myself, and all the things I've done helping others, coaching them, upskilling them, right skilling them, helping them get to where they want to go.
Awesome, man. And I think what you're talking about is your baby, this new thing called Kason Morris Learnings. Um,
Yeah.
so could you just like sum that up for someone who's coming into this fresh? What is Kason Morris Learnings?
What is Kason Morris Learnings? It's my life. It's my career journey in the sense of, you know, how I went about through lots of trial and error creating a happy work life. And by happy work life, I mean synergy between what I do professionally and the things that mean the most to me personally. Um, it's just an extraction of those lessons of helping myself and helping others through and sharing that to help people right now if they want to get a new job, if they're looking for a promotion and they're not sure how to get promoted and they're feeling a little bit stuck. Even those who want to start something new, they have a higher calling, wanting to start their own brands or build their own business, get into the realm of entrepreneurship. But the backbone of all that is really all around your skills and how you've built the skills throughout your life. I think that's a bit of my secret sauce in the sense that it's not always about learning something new. Like, yes, we're always learning and we're always growing, but it's also about using what you have right now, understanding how good you are right now and how you can leverage that to do what you want to do next.
That was beautifully said. Before we even like deep dive into Kason Morris Learnings, let's take a step back And
Yep.
let's just learn more about you and where your career started. You're talking about these things that fueled, Kason Morris learnings. I'm really interested in just understanding like where you started. Because I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you started it in the same place and where you at right where you're at right now, career wise,
No,
right?
not at all. Not at all. I can tell you that. I mean, most people think they had like their career path is a straight line, and it's like no, it's a series of pivots and opportunities that you just continue to build upon. So like, let me ask you a question, right? Just think about this broadly. When you drive in a car and you want to go somewhere, what do you typically do? Like, what's one of the first things you do?
Driving a car, I want to go somewhere. Get
Yeah,
directions.
somewhere that you've never gone before.
Get directions. Whether that
Right.
be go to Google Maps or back of the day MapQuest. Yeah, get
Right,
directions.
right.
Yeah.
So to that point, like you use a map or a GPS,
Mhm.
right? And when you think about it, a lot of us we jump into our careers and we jump into our work and we don't really have a destination. We don't really think about it. Like our careers and our lives happen to us.
Mhm.
And we spend a lot of time just wandering around trying to figure things out. And that was me for the first couple of years of my career. Out of college, started working at a marketing company, just trying to figure out where my next paycheck was coming from and what I wanted to do next. So I didn't have a plan at that point in time. But what happened for me is I got lucky. I wound up getting into a team lead role where I had to work with managing some other people, and I also had to help them with upskilling and building new skills for their role, and work with them through that process. And at that point, that's when it clicked for me. And
Can I
that,
ask you a
yeah, go
question real
ahead.
quick? Because you were saying like you got lucky and how you started off and you were in marketing, but then it kind of like pivoted off. What does getting lucky mean? Like, does that mean like you got the opportunity to do something? You saw like, oh, there's an opening for this, or was it just like literally a call in the office, like, hey, I need help with this, and you were just like, I could do that.
I would say I got lucky in the sense that what I was doing spoke to me.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out, at the time, I wasn't deliberately trying to figure out my way, like what I wanted to do next, what I liked to do, what I didn't like to do. I was just trying to get a check.
Yeah.
But what happened was when I took on that lead role and I started helping other people go from good to great
Hmm.
and build on top of things, I was like, oh, this is dope. Like, I actually really like getting that result for people. So
Yeah.
then that was the spark that sort of turned into my GPS, where I was like on my roadmap where I was like, what do I want to do this some more. How do I approach this?
Hmm.
How do I get more education? Like, how do I dig into this deeper?
Hmm.
And that started my curiosity and creativity toward this direction of coaching and developing others.
Yeah. How much of that was driven from the passion of you loving what you were doing at the time? And like, did it take you time to grow out of that mindset of chasing the bag? Like, because you were still in that mindset of just like, how am I getting this next paycheck? Like, how did those two align for you? And did they compete with each other at any point?
Absolutely. I mean, a 1,000%. I would say at that time, that's why I say I was lucky, because I wasn't as deliberate or as clear as I am now as a coach and mentor. It was just something I like to do. And my logic was like, well, I like doing this. How can I get better at it? How can I make more money with it? Do I need promotions? Do I need education? Whatever the case may be. And then sometimes, like you said, sometimes shinier things pop up, like depending on where your priorities are.
Yeah.
So there have been points and times in my career where I've had opportunities to take on different kinds of roles, which would lead to more money, more opportunities. But luckily, at those stages, I was smart enough in the sense of saying, like, you know what really matters to me? Is it just about the money, or is it about the type of work? Is it
Yeah.
about the quality of the work? How is it about me feeling good about it? Is it about how does it help others? All those kinds of questions.
Hmm.
And that's allowed me to make, I think, more smart decisions than not so smart decisions around that stuff.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. 'Cause we've talked about it, like just because coming where we come from in terms of like inner city kids, like a lot of the time when you're raised by, parents of color who are struggling to make ends meet, like you live in this world where everything is money. And I feel
Yeah,
like I see this from my perspective. Like I grew up in an era where there was no passion. Money was the passion. You get me?
yeah,
How can
yeah.
I get money? And I found myself like as I got older, like struggling now because it's just like you almost don't know like how to begin to find a passion. It's just like shit. Like some people, like I heard someone like interviewing someone the other day on a YouTube channel. They asked like, "What's your passion? Like, what if you could do anything and not get paid?" The person was like, "I'll just sit home and watch Netflix." And it's just like, no, there's a difference between like what you do for work and that you're passionate about, and what you're passionate about that doesn't require work. That's just luxury. You get me?
Yeah, no, for
Um,
sure.
and it's hard for us to discern the difference between that. Um, but yeah, I guess my question is like, like what would be your advice to others that come from where we're coming, like to combat those thoughts and those feelings of like, oh, I just care about money. Like how do you find the opportunity to care about something else other than money?
I wouldn't even like. It's so funny you bring that up because when you think about it, you're right. When you come from the block, like I was born and raised in the Bronx. Um, you that's your driver because of your socioeconomic situation and those around you. Working multiple jobs. It's always about a check as a means, not even for luxury, but as for survival.
Yeah.
So as you get older, you get in this mindset that, hey, I have to go make bread or do more, make money, because that's a barometer of how successful I am. And then that's just the thing. Success and happiness are not necessarily one in the same. So the advice that I would give to those who are truly thinking about, like, trying to separate the two, is you have to think about what makes you happy at the end of the day. I mean, that first question is like, what's the day in your life like? What are the things that bring you that inward joy,
Mhm.
and give you purpose and meaning? And then once you settle on those things, the follow-up question is like, hey, is this something I can make money from? Is this something I want to make money from? I know creatives who protect their passions, because adding the money element to it then makes it more like a job, and
Mhm.
they don't like that. It becomes like an obligation
Yeah.
versus just something that they love to do.
Yeah.
So there isn't a wrong answer, but I would say that, like, you got to think about that mix.
Yeah.
That's something I talk about in my coaching as well. Is like everyone has a mix. Like, you think like a mixing board,
Mhm.
like a DJ.
Yeah.
You know how they have different levels. You
Mhm.
got to think about your mix
Yeah.
for what keeps you good based on where you are.
Yeah. You had mentioned something interesting there about like being creative. It kind of like separating, like when someone's creative they almost want to separate like the job away from creativity, but we've talked about this from time to time where it's like
Hmm.
the people who are really making money, like the people who are out there and doing this and being successful, those are the people who are creative and they just put everything into that. Like it's just they're so like they're so passionate about what they do that
Yeah.
eventually they get discovered for it, and then eventually they get the big money for it because they're the only person that knows how to do acrylic paints this specific type of way.
Right.
um like us as like people of color, like I can tell you, like especially when I went to college, more so like I met up with other kids who are from industries like me, and they were changing their majors because the major they had didn't make money. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, but you love music. Like even if you don't become the next superstar, like you'll be the guy like holding the mic, or you'll be
Yeah.
in the room, which gets you closer to being that superstar. Um, but yeah, I find it interesting because like, you
But
know,
to your point though, that pressure that comes from society's expectations, that comes from your parents. Like, think about it, right? If you're not even being a creative, when you think about diverse communities, right?
Mhm.
What do they expect you to be? Oh, you got to go be a doctor or
Yep,
a lawyer or an engineer.
the ones that we
Or
all know that will technically be there forever.
right. So at that point, it stops becoming about you finding yourself, and you fulfill more so about you fulfilling an obligation for the pressures that others put on you. And then when you see the ticket, meaning how much it costs to go to school now, that becomes a pressure too, because it's like, hey, I'm spending how many $1,000s a semester of either my money or my parents' money doing something like creating music, like, is that going to put food on the table? And not to say that it can't, but it's just the pressure around the expectation of what you should be getting from school doesn't afford you that, unless you have really supportive parents, or you have a vision around it, or you're doing something else that makes you your bread, so that you can then pursue your music, because it's already that issue is already taken care of, you know.
Yeah. All right, so I'll switch it over a little bit. I know I want to come back around to a question more about Kason Morris learnings, but before we even get into that,
Mhm.
um, what are signs in someone's life that they need to switch up their career or change their life around?
That's a big question. I think it's really about, like, when you think about how you wake up. How do you wake up in the morning? Some people, they're ready to seize the day. Some people just don't want to get out of bed,
Yeah.
and I've seen this from somebody who's the fry cook to somebody who's the CEO. Um, it's like, what? How do you wake up every day?
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing I would say, that's a good sort of self check around where you might be.
Yeah. No, that's a great one to start out. And then another question for people out there, it's like, how does one pivot their career without starting over?
Oh, that's another really, really good question. Like, the art of the pivot. I think people need to understand what that really means. I mean, even using design thinking terminology, a pivot is like a reframe. So the idea that you're taking the problem that you have in this case, which is what you're doing now, and it's like, how do you reposition that for what you want to do next? You know.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, I think one of the things you have to start to do with it is think about where you want to go. What is truly your vision forward for your life?
Mhm.
And at that point, you can then start to look at, hey, based on where I am now, how far away or how close am I to that ideal space? And then what do I have to do to get there?
Okay. So this leads me to something that I think I want to say that you've coined it because I haven't heard anyone talk about this before. But you have this thing called career capital. And I think it closely ties to what you were talking about in terms of like analyzing where you're at and see where your strengths are so that
Yep.
you could pivot. Could you explain to people what career capital is and how they can like almost like absorb this idea and change the way they look at their talents through this idea of career capital?
For sure. Like, I think of, like, the work that you do is like energy. It never changes. It doesn't go away. It just changes form. So think about your career, right? We all do really good work, in different facets of our lives. We have different experiences. Within those experiences, in your job and what you're doing, there are things that you can market, that you can put a story around, that'll help you move to where you want to move next. So the idea of capital, career capital, is taking your career and think of it like a bank. Deliberately building experiences that you fill that bank up with, so that when you are ready to make the moves that you want to into your next career or your next opportunity, you now have this bank of experiences that you can talk about, or reframe toward that next step. So that's essentially what career capital is. It isn't my original term, but it's something I'm definitely, passionate about, and I believe in. So what I help people do, in essence, is take a different look at their career, because sometimes we think we know what we do, but
Hmm.
when someone else takes a step out and really looks at the things that we do, there's so much more there. And I
Yeah.
help them build that bank so they could have better conversations when they want to go for
Yeah.
that new interview, or try out for that new role and new opportunity.
Can you give some examples to the people out there that are listening? Like whether that be, someone who is coming from a job, flipping burgers at McDonald's and they want to get to that next level, or someone
Mhm.
who's, in HR and they want to switch over elsewhere. Like, are there examples of like things you would manipulate that might be on someone's, to-do list or their resume for things they did at McDonald's and how they can spin that to make them stand out. Like, let's say if they wanted to
Right.
get into banking.
Right. So I'll give you I'll literally give you the McDonald's to like say office worker
Yeah.
scenario, right? So let's say you work at McDonald's and you're flipping burgers and you're like, ah, you know what? I want to do this office job where I have to manage a team, I have to file, I have to stock, I have to use computers, right?
Yeah.
So if you were looking at that office job where you had certain skills or certain day-to-day activities, what I would then do is look at what I'm doing with my current job as a fry cook or working at McDonald's, and you'd be surprised when you start to look at these things. It's less about the action of what you're doing, like flipping burgers,
Hmm.
and all the other things around it that are actually the skills that you need to use to get to your next job. So it's like, oh, can I use computer systems?
Hmm.
McDonald's has a very sophisticated uh, computer system for managing orders and functions and stocks and different kinds of things like that. Are you good with people? Hey, you might be the fry cook or you might be the line manager,
Hmm.
but you're engaging people every day. You're managing rotational teams of different folks, helping them make sure that they hit, whatever their quota is for at that point in time. So it's less about where you're doing it and more about the activity and the muscle that you're building.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing that I extract and I work with people to understand. So it's not changing the truth. It's really getting people to realize that they have way more skills and way more talent than they could ever imagine. But all we tend to look at is that big shiny thing, like, oh, that's the boss, that's the office person, that's the money. And it's like, nah, you're already doing great work right where you are.
Yeah. They like look at the job description for something like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't meet those, or I didn't do any of those things. But the minute you start to look at it through this lens, it opens up connections in your mind. Just like, wait, I've done all this. It's just
Yeah,
working with people.
100%.
Um, so, which leads me into one of my final questions that I want to ask you before we hop into something more interactive for you guys, which is going to be different.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think jobs are going to look like in the future? We've had conversations and back and forths about this. I'll go on my rant a little later, but what do jobs look like for you in the future?
Oh man, that is like the $1 million question. If I can figure it out, if I can crack it, man, you might catch me. Not, I mean, Oprah doesn't run specials anymore, but you might catch me on CNN or something like that. But the way the way I really think about it is I think about everything that's happened with COVID, and even the way that skills work in our society today. Everything's moving so fast. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. We're in this digital age
Yeah.
where like skills are, by the time you learn a skill, it's in many respects a lot of that skill is expired and you have to be ready for the next thing. So what I envision happening is that pretty much people are going to have to get a lot sharper at being able to build new skills fast, being able to bridge the skills that they have into the next thing.
Career capital.
um yep, the career capital, being able to, those who are going to be the first at something are the ones that will eat. So it's not about knowing what's next, but it's about being flexible and fast to adapt where you are right now to that next thing.
Yep.
Because after that, everybody else is going to come in, they're going to adopt it, and then it's going to be on to the next thing. I find in my career work, when I work with like those who are creatives, designers, IT, like their mindset to me is sort of the sort of archetype for continuous learning and the kind of worker of tomorrow that when you're a coder, knowing code C++ from like 4 years ago isn't going to help you.
Yeah.
You have to constantly update and refresh your knowledge in order to stay relevant, and you're constantly experimenting. And so I borrow from those disciplines to help people move forward. But I see a lot of that, and I also see the resume going away.
Yeah. No, I
I
can't.
said,
I couldn't agree more with that last one.
mhm,
Yes, 100%. It's gonna be less
yeah,
about what you know and what you do with what you know, type of thing.
yeah, yeah. I think we're going to move into the world of the portfolio. I think people are going to be more along the lines of like, hey, that's great that you have that experience, but show me what you can do. And if you look at even now in the industries, the Googles, the Apples, a lot of high tech industries, they've gotten rid of college requirements. Like, yeah, you need certain certifications, but they'll look at your portfolio of work to see how well you can handle current concepts in order to do the kinds of jobs of the future and the things that they're thinking about that they want you to do.
Yeah. Yes, that was perfectly said. Um, all right, guys. So pivoting off of that, we're gonna get a little more interactive here. Kason's gonna walk us through something that he calls vision casting. It is literally, how would you explain it? It's like it's gonna be a workflow that people can follow, at home
Yeah.
along with us. There's gonna be certain steps. But yeah, just I'll give you some time right now to like you can pause, get everything you need. I think you might need like paper. That's about it, right? Paper, pencil,
Yeah.
something to write some stuff down. But yeah, that being said, I will let Kason take the rest away.
Cool, cool. I mean, all you really need is paper and a good ear. So, to what Chris had said, we're gonna talk about this idea of vision casting. So when you think about what a vision cast is, it's the idea that you're thinking about what your future may look like, where you want to go. Because what most people do is they often set goals for themselves, but don't think about how they're going to go about achieving those goals. And so the vision cast is the first part of that step. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But what I'm going to give you guys is three easy steps that you can work on right now to help lay out that vision. And that first step that we cover is the idea of taking stock of your vision. So, what Chris and I have talked about during our conversation today, it's like, hey, do you at this point right now have a vision for your life? And in that context, think about it. What does that mean for your career or your business? Or perhaps you're looking to transition from career to entrepreneurship or from one place to another. So really the exercise here at this point is just take a moment and write that down. Do you have an understanding of these three questions? What will your answers be? And from that point, while you're writing that down, I wanted to explain to you and clarify a little bit more the difference between visioning and goal setting. So I can just make that crystal clear. So when you think about visioning, right, and what that is, it's really all about your what, your how, your who, your where, and sometimes when. So like, what's your what? It's like, what do you want to do? Your how is the idea of how do you approach it? How am I going to go about getting this done? Your who is, has anyone done it before? And that reality is you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. This is where we look at those of us who have walked a path that we may want to walk and find that inspiration. And this falls in lines with the idea of copying and stealing. It's like, who has done it already? You know? So then the other point that I would think about is like, where do you want that to happen? Do you want that to happen in sunny California? Do you want that to happen in the concrete jungle of New York City? Do you want that to happen in Antarctica? Where do you vision your greatness happening? And then sometimes when, depending on what it is you're trying to do, we typically try to put timelines on things. When I work with people, it's like you try to put realistic timelines on the things you're trying to achieve. Now, how that contrasts to goal setting is the goal setting side of things is actually the actual milestones and the steps that you have to take in order to make that vision reality. And what people do a lot of is they set goals like, I want more money, I want to be rich, I want a big house, but they don't think about what kind of house. They don't think about how they're going to get it. They don't think about who's going to help them. They don't think about where it is. They don't think about how long it takes. So these are the kinds of things that you always have to do beforehand to keep you moving. But with that in mind, that should have given you guys enough time to start to think about what your stock of vision was. And now we're going to talk about the second step, which is envisioning your dream day. And the reason why I talk about this in the sense of a day is because one of the things about goals is that goals can get crazy daunting and scary for us sometimes, because we put these big lofty goals out there and we're like, I don't even know how to start, where I'm going to start, what I'm going to do. So I go through this part to try to get you to think about a day, one day in your life, because it's very easy. It's easier to conceptualize and think deep versus trying to plan like, hey, what does my next life or next year look like? So in thinking about your dream day, what I want you to do is take 20 minutes and ignore any and all limitations in your mindset and answer some of the questions that I'm about to go through. So that first question is around the idea of, where do you live? To some of the points that I made up before. What do you do when you wake up? And I made this point earlier. It's like, how are you feeling? Do you go get a coffee? Do you write in a journal? Do you run a couple of miles? Envision where you're working. I mean, the actual place. Is it in your home office? Is it in the ivory towers, some great building somewhere? Think about those things. And now going on to the other set of questions as you start to write these down is, what do you do all day? What does a day in your life look like? Do you help customers work through their creative blocks? Are you like Chris, and do you help people put together badass podcasts and long form content? What are you doing in your day? And it's, who do you meet? Who do you talk to? Are you talking to customers? Are you meeting other business owners? Are you going to meetups? Different things like that. So the goal here is to take a good amount of time, about 20 minutes, to really think and reflect and write down the details around that question, around what does your day look like? And don't put any limits on it. It's your dream day.
Yep. Don't be afraid to pause the video. We'll be back. Like,
Yep. And there's a point to doing all this. So take that time, write it down, tell your story to yourself. And now that that's all done, right? We get to the last stage of it. So it's like, what does your day look like? You start to take and create a list of insights based on that day. I can use myself as an example. My dream day is doing this kind of stuff. I was working with people like Chris, creating content that helps other people move forward in what they do. And the more people I can help and reach, the more rewarding it is for me. That's an element of my dream day. But for yours, when you take that, when you start to gather those insights, right? Let's ask ourselves a couple of like roundup questions around it. Is that, what profession did you have? What are you doing? Because one of the things I focus on is the idea of career, because career to me is very closely tied to life and making sure you're doing meaningful work. So like Chris, just asking you the question, what kind of profession do you have in your dream day?
Well, if we're talking just right now, the profession I have in my
Yeah.
dream day is exactly what I'm doing right now.
See, Chris
Just
is living his
waking up.
dream.
Well, yeah,
You know?
we can pivot. Like I've been following Kason for a bit now. He actually helped me pull this whole transition of what you guys see here. Prior to me doing producing, I was a product designer at another company. And I was doing product design work for about like 6 years. I actually rose the ranks from like junior UX designer to senior product designer. And then I just decided that it didn't make me happy anymore. And I just pivoted smartly. I remember talking with Kason, going through those days and like just like finding these connections and these patterns in terms of what I already knew and how that aligned with where I wanted to go. And then I just kind of put rubber to the road. I was just like, I'm just going to try this out. And slowly but surely things started to build up and I
Yeah.
eventually got here. But yeah.
So no, that's dope. And to that question, Chris, how do you, knowing that you did that, like, how do you feel? How do you feel about taking ownership of your career and where you are right now?
It feels amazing. I every day I wake up and I'm happy because I know that I'm doing work for myself. I think a big thing was like working for others, and it's like you're either making someone else's dream come true or you're making your dream come true. And
Amen.
now I can tell you with 100% certainty that I wake up and I pursue my own dreams. Like I wake up and I'm pursuing what makes me happy, and it feels damn good. I can't tell you like I haven't woken up and had to hop on a 6 morning call, like 6 a.m. in the morning call. I can start my day whenever I want. And the scary thing about it is just like I'm only accountable for what I choose to be accountable for. But the thing is, when you choose to be accountable for something, that's it. You're accountable for it
Yep.
100%. There is no company or logo backing you up. There's no manager that was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like he was busy, he couldn't do that." Like if I drop the ball on something, it falls on my shoulders, which is the fire that I like that pushes me forward and makes me love this. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Great answers. I mean, you really just did the last part of the exercise, and that's why I asked you the questions, because when you start to take this journey, and it all started with you trying to figure out your vision of what you wanted to do. So for those who are listening, their next actions in relation to this exercise, just to close it out, is based on that vision and the questions you answered. You can start to bullet list and collect some insights, and what that's going to do is that's going to help you better define that career plan, that life plan that you want to achieve. So it's the starting point for everything, and that visioning piece is always your first step. That's the advice, that if you take away anything from what I've just shared with you, is if you go through that exercise, you will be much better forward in clarity around the things that you want, and then whatever plan you start to put together will make a lot more sense, and you'll have goals and milestones that are aligned to the bigger picture of your vision.
yep. What's the saying? Like you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been.
Pretty much. That's
Or
that's
where
last
others
I
have
heard.
been. That's another, that's another thing to add to that.
Don't stay back there,
Yeah.
but have an understanding of where you were, so you know where you're going to go moving forward,
Awesome.
and what to take with you in your backpack.
Awesome. So, vision casting is always the way when you get started, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode, Kason. Before we sign off, just tell the people where they can find you, how they can reach out to you. I know you have a website launching pretty soon.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm gonna have a website under my name, kasonmorris.com. Um, right now, I'm also working on putting together an academy. So where I'm all these learnings and coachings that I do, they're going to be available to you via my online academy. And if you want to just see more of what I'm talking about in general, you can certainly follow me on LinkedIn. I definitely talk my talk on LinkedIn, but my academy is going to be the home for all the career and life skill products that I build for the culture, for people like us to help them move forward. It'll be like me coaching you without necessarily having to be there. And then maybe when all this COVID stuff wraps up, I can be there and coach you still. So that's where you'll find me. You'll find me on my website. You'll find me on LinkedIn, and then
Awesome.
hopefully you'll find me in a coffee shop near you after this COVID is over.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. That is exactly it. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Chris. Again, this is How to Copy and Steal. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to go follow Kason as well. Thank you, Kason, for joining me. Hopefully, we can get you on again and we can, share some more knowledge with people, give some free courses to people. I don't know. Maybe I'll be the plug for Kason to get the free stuff from him. But uh,
Yeah, look, I'll definitely hook you up, and I'll hook your audience up for sure. And as soon as I'm able to hop on a plane, it's definitely gonna be one of my stops to get in your studio. Because your model is awesome. The way you're able to help people build their content, super dope, super innovative. I haven't seen anybody do it like the way that you do it. And I'm proud to support and advocate for all the great work you're doing with Copy and Steal.
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking this journey with me and helping me along the way. With all that said, thank you guys. Peace. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.